Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the 90th minute, a football discussion where we bring on a guest. Obviously, we'll have the little intro when we get our guest. We brought on Brendan Dunlop. He's a Canadian icon in a sense to us and many Canadian football fans. He was really the host of Sportsnayas.
Yeah, he was, growing up in let's say 10 years ago, let's say, he was the face of Canadian soccer, Canadian football television. He had the radio show. He's something that we all aspired to be as younger selves, and now we're able to talk to him. We're able to get his opinions on football. So we really appreciate his time. Thank you for coming on to the 90th minute. Before we get into the discussion, into the interview, make sure you like the 90th minute, comment, and subscribe on this video. Get involved with the conversation we're having today. Give us your thoughts on what we talk about. Myself, Liam, it's Woz, it's Brendan. Let's get into it.
Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back to a brand new episode of the 90th minute, where we bring on a guest. We got a football discussion with Brendan Dunlop.
Yeah, it's for many of our international viewers, you may not know who this guy is, but us Canadians, we grew up watching this guy on our TV screens. He was the first kind of like football show that we all checked out and watched. So in the Canadian football soccer landscape, this guy's a big deal. So we greatly appreciate you coming on the podcast. We've had Jimmy Conrad on before, but personally, I think you're my top favorite guy.
I very much appreciate that, man. Thanks for the setup. And it's great to see how the game has grown and how across platforms you guys can do, podcasts, and you guys have blown up on TikTok, which is where I found you. So this is cool, man. And also, this is the first time someone said they've grown up watching me, which is the line I always say to James Sharman to make him feel real. I threw the hat on to cover the grade in the side. Not reflecting the grade.
That was actually where I wanted to start this discussion, was how you started with Christian Jack. You guys had this fantastic show on Sportsnet. How do you feel the Canadian soccer, football, television has changed over the past, let's say, decade or so?
Also, before we get that, apologies, I have a barking dog, so I'll go deal with that. Liam, you continue having your discussion. I'll go. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Liam's got the mic.
It's almost as if the dog knew that you were busy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as soon as we started, 100%.
Now the dog is noticing every leaf that's fallen and every mailman that's throwing Amazon packages. Absolutely. Man, the footy show on The Score was a really special thing, honestly. The Score was great for giving us the opportunity and constantly trying and reinventing new things as media change and you know how quickly it does. At that time, we were still talking about television, trying to work in the web, and the big switch was to high definition.
100%.
And now the switch is, keeping soccer actually on people's televisions and not exclusively on streaming services. But if you look at, giving the football fan value, you subscribe to DAZN, if you subscribe to One Soccer, the opportunities to watch it on demand, to have every match available, that's something that didn't exist when it was on television. So there's two sides to it all. I do think it's disappointing that soccer is not as accessible on television as it seems to grow a bigger audience and to non-soccer fans. People like us are always going to find it. If I can only find it on the Uber app, and I had to pay, then I would watch it on the Uber
100%,
app.
100%.
That was the only way to consume it. You and I would do that. But non-soccer fans aren't as tempted to do that. So removing it from TV, not having the Champions League on in bars during normal circumstances when people are in bar restaurants in the middle of the day, I think that's disappointing. To take it off of out of the mainstream eye makes it difficult for the sport to grow. But then again, everything is cyclical. So who knows how long it lasts, and if these streaming services end up on television, that changes. I just think it's definitely changed a lot in 10 years, and there's two sides of it. Definitely more accessibility if you're down, not that interested. I don't know. On it. That's what programs like you guys are great for, and what I'm always is push it. I always, if the producer on the highlight show says, "Hey, we'll give you 3 plays," I always push for 5.
Yeah, 100%.
90-second highlight pack of this game. Let's just do a 1 play of Everton Burnley because this goal was nice. You get one more highlight pack in, and then it sticks in people's minds a little bit, or so you hope.
Like I'm in my early 20s. Growing up, watching. My dad's Scottish, so I wanted to watch Celtic. Wanted to watch Scottish Premiership. Non-existent. You get maybe 1 or 2 games a season. Now it's transitioning into, you get a couple more league games throughout the season. Like you mentioned, Champions League is becoming more common on, Canadian television. you got DAZN, you got different streaming platforms that are entering the market and taking more of the responsibility, let's say, instead of your TSNs or your big.
Guess we'll have a guest with us.
We're having a guest with us. The dog's in here.
Yeah, it's the only way he'll shut up. So
Perfect.
But yeah, entering these streaming platforms, like I said, entering the market, wanting to be leaders rather than the traditional television broadcasters, let's say. How do you feel it's not the transition, more just so, do you think it's for the better or for the worse that these streaming platforms are taking over?
Yeah, well, as I was saying, I mean, it's for the soccer fan who's down to consume it in whatever way it is available. They do a phenomenal job to have every game available, to have it accessible on demand. The Europa League is on now, and in a normal Europa League Thursday, there's 300 games going on. Teams that you've never heard of before. You actually have the access on DAZN to watch whatever game you want. So if you happen to be from Lithuania or Latvia and your team is there, and that's your only chance to see it, similar to how you described, watching Celtic on TV back in the day, I think that's great, and that these streaming platforms can focus and be soccer only and really, really give the soccer fan all they could possibly ask for. That's just something that didn't exist 10 years ago and would never exist with linear television and with the big boys, because they're competing against all the other sports. And soccer is growing and will continue to grow. I think with the appearance at a World Cup, be that in Qatar or be that when it's here in 6 years, that's really going to have a huge push. But the reality is, in 300 years, soccer will never be where hockey is as far as mainstream media and the marketplace is concerned. So I really do like what the streaming services are doing for the soccer fan, because they're really prioritizing the sport. That's just something that the big bucks teams, big bucks companies were never able to do to the extent that soccer fans want. But I do worry that being on the streaming service, you're not going to attract the neutral fans that you may have been able to when there was an 11 o'clock Premier League game on the score back in the day. I think that pull isn't there anymore. But then there's other avenues. There's soccer TikTok, there's the YouTube shows and things like that. Other ways to pull new people in. So hopefully we can continue to do that before 2026.
Do you have anything you want to say?
No, what did I miss, first of all?
Oh, we were talking about like DAZN and different things like that. How the Canadian football landscape is changing.
Yeah, no, you go on with your questions. Got a couple.
I was just gonna say, so you being part of that first show, as I mentioned, with Jack and Sharman, how do you feel like how you shaped a generation of football fans in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, Sharman definitely played a really big role in that. I think that there wasn't a face like James Sharman in soccer before. There was a few voices. There was a Dick Howard and Jerry Dobson were great. Mm-hmm. They were for TSN and Sportsnet at the time, and they were the voices of some match broadcasts and some Canadian games. But Sharman was kind of that first guy without a tie on, and the first guy that you wanted to have a beer with. That came across as that real type of football. Yeah. Happened to be on television. So Christian and I were very lucky to share that same type of attitude and have a space with James to kind of do that show. So yeah, it's a huge compliment. I know Sharman feels the same way. It's a massive compliment whenever someone says that they got into football because of that show, or that's the reason they love the game, or why they got into football media, and then that really sparked their interest in the sport. Because that did it for me too, and it did it for a lot of people. So yeah, James definitely flew the flag and led the way for that. And if it wasn't for him, I've said this before on several other platforms and interviews, if it wasn't for James giving me an opportunity on that show, I may have gone to Korea to teach English.
Oh wow!
How did you get into the football television game?
Yeah, so I started at the Score after my second year at university. I started in archives, so like a media librarian. So we would take the probably 9 to 12 minutes of a game that they had cut into some 30, 90-second highlight pack. We would archive those 9 minutes in case we needed it for something down the line, for some feature. So I did that part-time for a little while. Then I did radio on the Score. Had a Sirius satellite radio station called Hardcore Sports Radio. And I had a soccer show with James and KJ. They were great. They let me produce it, and I was the host, and they were just the analysts. It was their way into radio and my way into working with those guys. And that spawned into joining them on the Footy Show, and I got to be the social media guy, the Twitter guy, reading the tweets and comments and running the blogs. crazy how things have changed because that format would never work now.
Yeah.
At the time, it was pretty revolutionary, man, and very, very cool to be a part of it for sure.
I guess my question is like, what's some advice you can give someone who's trying to kind of break through into the sports broadcasting side of things, but mostly like when it comes to football and soccer? So I feel like it's maybe a little bit tougher now. I don't know. What are your thoughts kind of on that? What kind of advice you can give to some?
Yeah, I think soccer's always been hard. I mean, for me, soccer's always been my love. I'm a big baseball guy as well. I grew up in Canada. I do love hockey. But I never really thought that I would be able to work in soccer. And then I was very fortunate that my first full-time job was just soccer only. But there's probably, at the time there, when I was at the Score, maybe 10 people who also shared that same blessing. And I worked with 4 of them. So it's soccer is definitely limited a little bit in the big media landscape for sure. But for anyone who's trying to get into sports media and anyone who has a passion, whether it be rugby or cricket, something that's not hockey, that's not super mainstream, I always say it's follow your passion and create.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great, with this time that we're in right now. You have so many different platforms and so many different avenues to do that. And it's all about reps. It's not about views. It's not about likes. It's not about clicks. At any level, I say that once you get on television and you're in the national exposure, it's the same thing with ratings. If you looked at the ratings every day and you only based your ideas of creative programming on television based on the ratings, I think you're doing yourself and your audience a huge disservice. So the same goes for social media and the same goes for creative content. If you're so focused on the numbers all the time, then you really are not going to create the best content possible.
100%.
Yeah.
It's just about getting those reps and those opportunities. So like you guys, you can get together once a week, 3 times a week and do the podcast. That is amazing. You get some 2 hours, you get some 20 minutes. It's just about getting the repetitions in, and that's what makes you better. So really the opportunity to get reps and to improve your skill, I think now young aspiring journalists have more opportunity than ever to do that, to practice their craft.
Like, I know when we started the 90th minute, we kind of sat down one day, we said, there's no Canadian football content that's accessible to everyone, kind of thing. Yes, you have your television programs, you have your few radio shows, but we wanted to kind of start something that was Canadian and uniquely for us, the life that we've grown up in, and not being able to catch every game on TV or waking up at 5 a.m. to watch, the first Premier League match of the day. We wanted something that Canadians or North Americans in general could kind of identify with. I think that's what made your show and your content on TikTok kind of, it felt real because, we kind of felt the same thing. We saw the similar patterns of it, in a sense.
Yeah. There's a real authenticity to the football fan, right? And especially North America makes it different. And you guys are Western guys. I'm based in Toronto. I grew up in Windsor, so I was on the American border. I still don't understand weather in Celsius. And my introduction to international soccer was actually the U.S. men's national team because they were accessible. They were on TV. I could actually go see them play. Those players were the ones doing autograph signings at any type of tournament that, as a youth soccer player, I was playing in. So that was kind of like my avenue, which is very unique to not too many other Canadians that I speak to seem to have had that experience. Much like you guys on the West Coast, soccer's super early. So I find my wife is from Vancouver, and her father's not into football, her brother's not into football, and I find that unless you come from a real football background, you've been lived in another place per se, or you have a real tether, a real introduction to it, you're unlikely to get into it, especially once you reach legal drinking age, because you're unlikely to wake up at 7 or at 4:30 to watch the game. I think that soccer on the West Coast actually has a harder time of pulling fans, and to get real geeky from like a TV perspective, you definitely see that in the ratings. So
100%,
ratings considerably higher on the East than they would on the West. That even extends to in prime time with MLS. I think that just in general, they have a hard time fighting for eyeballs and fighting for attention. So, the Sounders obviously have a huge following. The Whitecaps have a great following, don't get me wrong. But I just don't think that the attention is there for the TV swing to match kind of the attention.
Well, you kind of mentioned that because a lot of times people from overseas in Europe, they'll look at us and like, oh, you guys are plastic supporters or plastic fans. But the only exposure of football we've ever had is like Premier League with you guys on Sportsnet, the guys on TSN. Like, we didn't have a local league. Canada just recently got a local league, and I'll be honest, no one was ever interested in watching the NASL. So it's like, I mean, what are we supposed? Like you said, like your only exposure was the U.S. men's national team because that's the closest thing you can get to football. For us, the closest thing we got to football was like, for example, the Premier League on Sportsnet, or the Champions League. No one really ever cared about Canadian Premier League or the MLS too much. It was always Premier League, Champions League. So you do, yeah. I like what you bring up there.
What's cool too is like watching the evolution, right? I mean, for you guys to say hugely complimentary that you grew up watching me. I still feel as though in that 10 years or that 15 years that I was at the Score and we did the Footy Show, you can see how much the game has changed in this country. We're talking about the access, obviously, to be able to watch every, but also too to see the lexicon, like how it's grown overseas and the idea in people's minds from overseas. It's changing. You're not going to get as many people saying like, "Oh, you guys are just plastic because you didn't grow up with the game," because a lot of them will now know of Canadian soccer because of Alphonso Davies.
Yeah.
Or maybe Atiba Hutchinson. Every time I run into someone who's Turk, if they do not have a huge allegiance to Galatasaray or Fenerbahce, the second they recognize that I'm Canadian, that's the conversation.
Yeah.
So I think it's just, it's a slower process than we as football fans would like. But we got to recognize that it's happening, and that evolution is finally turning a corner and picking up steam largely because of Fonzie and because of where the game is in this country now, which is in a much healthier place, I think, than it's ever really been as far as the national team goes.
I was going to talk about the national team, actually. We mentioned the 2026 World Cup being hosted here in Canada. What are some realistic expectations you think we can look at for the Canadian team?
To be honest, just fielding a team that's competitive, fielding a team that other teams fear, and that really gives the country, I think, hope that they will hold their own on the national stage. And not just there because they're hosting the tournament, not to be held scoreless and to just have the floor wiped by whatever country that they end up paired against in the group. I feel as though it's just Canada's fate. They're definitely going to get an Argentina or Brazil, or maybe a Copa America winning Chile, something like that. They're going to get some intimidating force to be the first match, or definitely in the group stage. But I just think being able to hold their own against teams that aren't in CONCACAF, for 90 minutes, they can still lose, but just hold and be competitive and keep the attitude and the hope high, I think, because one of the things that it's a real Canadian thing, we can get really down very quickly on our own.
Yeah.
Nice and friendly, and as hugely supportive as Canadians are, I don't know what it's like in Edmonton, but I'm sure you guys know the idea in Toronto of how fickle Toronto sports fans can be.
Yeah.
When they're winning, they're the best, but if they lose a game to the Panthers, or look what happened with the Zamboni driving goalie that played for the Hurricanes, the world is collapsing.
Well, yeah, like
I think that happened in Canadian soccer at the World Cup.
No, like we're here in Edmonton. It's like it's all about Connor McDavid. If the Oilers are playing bad, that means Connor McDavid wants out. So it's kind of like that. I guess my next question has something to do with Canadian football. How do you think? What are your thoughts on the Canadian Premier League? We've never had we had a local league back in like the 80s, 90s, but it kind of folded. What are your thoughts on the current league?
Honestly, I think the Canadian Premier League is fantastic. When they first talked about it and getting some of the CFL teams involved and creating a league, in a weird way, I thought it was too much. That now that we have 3 professional academies in MLS, I was kind of basing it on all the failures of the past. And I thought that it would actually, in a weird way, I thought that maybe it would break up the structure that had been created to funnel the best talent through these professional teams. I quickly learned to realize that it actually creates far more opportunities and really does unify the development in a way that we've really struggled since USA 94. And I feel like, the last 2 decades, Canadian soccer, for several reasons, political being one, geography definitely being another, just hasn't been able to unify the search and the development scheme and game for program for these talented kids. And I think with the Canadian Premier League being established, 8 teams now. I really do feel like it will grow to 10 to 12 teams in the next few years. And that's just only going to give more opportunities to kids and more opportunities for Canadians to develop their game at home and not feel as though they have to decide at 8 or 12, like Julian and Jonathan de Guzman, to leave and move away. And if they're, as fortunate as Junior Hoylett at 10 years old, with his entire family moved to Blackburn with him, there's not too many kids in that situation. There's not too many kids and or parents who'd be comfortable putting their child in that situation either. So to be able to do that and develop it at home with experienced coaches and experienced players, if you had told me, if I was 17, 18 years old, and you had told me I had the opportunity to train with Jimmy Brennan, who played at Norwich forever, was the first TFC captain, that would be mind blowing. That's just not that existed to anyone my current age or anyone older than me, certainly. So I think that from a development standpoint, the Canadian Premier League is really going to help that. And then from the entertainment standpoint too, it's great to have another league to look at, another league to watch, and one that's uniquely our own. And you can celebrate those kids, coming up and those kids making a name for themselves, maybe a couple years later than Davies or other stars would be able to in a major soccer environment. They can have a real platform to take over now.
Now, I know some people are going to look at the Canadian Premier League. Oh, but it's the Canadian Premier League. There's no quality there. There's no one playing. I mean, it's not about the quality. It's about developing something. I mean, it was just starting out, and I feel like there's a lot of hidden gems, hidden talents in Canada that are ready to be unearthed because of the Canadian Premier League. And no European scout's going to come to Canada and go, I'm going to go watch the local youth league in Newfoundland or PEI or Hamilton. So I really like what the Canadian Premier League brings to this country for football-wise. I'll leave it. Yeah,
and a couple of the sales. Borges, the player of the year, sold to Europe, and Emilio Estevez has gone, I believe, to Den Haag to Holland, and this is great. And there are a lot of scouts paying attention, and I think we'd be surprised as football fans who talk to other football fans online or when we travel, and they don't rate Canadian soccer and they write it off or they ignore us completely, as you said. Oh, you plastic fans. But from a professional standpoint, they see it very differently. There's a lot of eyes now that respect and understand the quality and know that there's a ton of hidden gems, and then they want to find that. So I really think that Canada has the opportunity, and the Canadian Premier League has the opportunity to be what South America is to like Portugal and those mid-level Italian teams.
100%.
Look, we're going to buy these players that nobody knows, that have really shined for their team in Chile or Paraguay or in the lower division in Brazil, and we're going to give them a platform here. And I think that you're going to see that as the Canadian Premier League goes forward, that it will be a development league that benefits from great sales and some great opportunities for Canadian kids that wouldn't have had that 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, we're starting to see more and more Canadians sprinkled across European leagues, and yeah, I mean Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David are always going to take the headlights, just take the main attention, let's say, because they're on such a big clubs, they're doing so well. But there's so many young players across Europe who are making the name for themselves, doing their thing. Do you think that those younger players, those smaller names, could be kind of like catalysts for more Canadians to make those moves?
Absolutely, yeah. I think at all level, whether you are a superstar like David and Davies, or you are someone like Stefan Estaquio, who's playing in Portugal, and who is Portuguese, got a couple caps with the Canadian national team now. It's just all about growing the attention and the awareness, really, of Canadian soccer. So any player who's in that environment is able to do that, and it will grow the attention and the reputation of the game. So yeah, we should absolutely be cheering for every single Canadian who's playing their trade, whether they are playing for the rival of the team you hate. If there was a Canadian kid, I love Aston Villa. If there was a Canadian kid playing in Birmingham City, I would be reading the match report, watching the highlights, tweeting about him at every opportunity. I would look for his team to lose every match still. Great if he was scoring a hat trick, every other game out, and really just having the time of his life and improving his game. That would be special.
Should we go talk about Aston Villa?
Yeah, I mean, why not transition to the Premier League? Let's start off with Aston Villa. Why? How come you support Aston Villa?
Dion Dublin.
Yeah, okay.
Reason I love Aston Villa. So when the Premier League first was on Sportsnet and first in Canada on a consistent basis live, I think they were doing a live game. It may have been only the 10 o'clock games, 10 o'clock for us, 8 for you. The 3 o'clock English kickoffs There was one game a week available on Sportsnet. It was always rotating.
Oh wow.
My dad had lived in England. My dad was a race car driver back in the day, and he was big into football, got me into it. But he'd never had a club, didn't really have an affiliation. As you know, you're a kid, you play hockey on the weekends, first thing in the morning. So we would come home from hockey, Dad would make pancakes, and we'd watch the Premier League. It's 10 o'clock game. And I was waiting, weeks, months go by, waiting for a team to really like. And Aston Villa's playing Southampton. And in the pre-show, they say, oh, this new signing, Dion Dublin, had come over from United, scored a brace in his debut. Okay. Scores a hat trick in this game against the Saints. So I was like, that's it. This is my guy, and this is my team. So I've been riding that emotional roller coaster with the players.
Yeah.
Oh, you had such a fantastic past month here where you stayed up in the Premier League. It was, did you actually think you were going to stay up at that final day?
No. When Theo Walcott scored that goal to take the win away from Villa against Everton there at Goodison, I thought, that's it. They're done. I did not know that God wanted down and that Watford wanted to go down. I would have never thought that. And yeah, I mean, the final moments, you're just hoping that once Villa had conceded to West Ham, you're just hoping that the Cherries don't win and pull off what would have been an unbelievable escape to condemn Villa and send them down. So yeah, it truly is a great escape. There needs to be a 30 for 30 about it.
So how much is Jack Grealish worth, actually?
Honestly, he's priceless.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny with transfer fees and numbers, and I see you guys talking about the rumors and this money. Honestly, it could just be. It feels like it really is monopoly. We should just say they're talking about this move for 500 million rubles or whatever, because the money doesn't matter. Value, the transfer values have just been so overblown. I really wonder how the game will be affected. In the fallout of the pandemic, I really find it hard to believe that we're still going to see $100 million transfers, £100 million deals. I just don't know how soccer can be sustainable that way. How sports and business can be sustainable when you're still operating like that. So I think we're going to see a shift. Maybe not this transfer window. I wouldn't be surprised if Grealish goes for £70 million still. I think Grealish, his best fit for a big club to stay in England, I think, is Arsenal. I don't think he settles in well at United at all. I don't think that they don't need him the way the midfield is at the moment. Same at City. I can't really see him, back holding down a place at City. Spurs, I could see him. There was always the rumor of Spurs, and even under Mourinho still, who knows how long that'll last. Maybe I could see him at Spurs, but I think that he'd have a great fit under Mikel Arteta and playing that style. I think Arsenal would be the best spot for him, but I don't know how anxious they are to write a big check at the moment or how keen they are on putting him in there. But for him and his development, I think that would be the best spot.
I actually wanted to talk about Mikel Arteta a little bit and the kind of transition in the Premier League for younger managers. We see Frank Lampard at Chelsea and Mikel Arteta, like you said. Managers that are becoming closer to your age rather than your father's age. Do you see that transition in the Premier League, and do you think it'll happen to more clubs as we go on?
You mean young players, but more clubs giving young players
younger managers.
Recently retired players.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I do think that, and you're actually seeing that across the board in other sports as well. You look at Major League Baseball, the Yankees and the Red Sox last year with 2 first-year managers who were making less than the minimum salary player on their team, in Aaron Boone and Alex Cora, and that really stood out to me because I thought, well, here are teams who want to give these players opportunities but don't truly believe in their value, and then here are guys who want to prove their worth. And understand that they're not going to get a big paycheck, or they could get that paycheck. And both of those guys were getting bigger paychecks doing television, but to get that opportunity to manage. And I think you're definitely seeing that in football now, where these clubs who respect what Steven Gerrard did as a player, knowing he doesn't have the background or the managerial education to run a big club, but give him the opportunity and see what he can do. And they can connect with players in different ways. And this is really the problem with Jose Mourinho and a few other managers, where the generational disconnect has never been so big, and I really think this will be the end of the road for Jose. Carlo Ancelotti has done well so far at Everton, but I wonder how that will last. I wonder will he be able to get the best out of Moise Kean and young players like that, whereas I think that these young players coming up who watched Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard play, revere them in a way that they can absorb that information better. And I think that these coaches are now, these players who have become coaches, are coaching and speaking to players in a much more relatable way than some of the older guys and the well-trained old textbook guys. So I do think you're going to see a lot more clubs give their former players and these young managers opportunities at an early age. And so far, it's done well for a few guys that I thought would struggle. I really thought that Gerrard and Lampard would struggle, similar to the way Thierry Henry has. But those guys have done well, so I think you'll see a lot more clubs look to give their ex-players those opportunities too.
Well, even with Zidane, like, I mean, he's kind of up there in age somewhat, but he just walked into that Real Madrid job almost. I mean, he took over the B team for a while, but he walked in that team, and now he's got 3 Champions Leagues.
He's done.
He's done pretty well. So I don't know. I feel like when you hire someone who's a younger manager, they kind of understand the modern game a little bit because they played in it. With older managers like Mourinho, even Van Gaal, they've been around so long that they kind of get stubborn with their tactics and their ways. Same with Ancelotti, that they're not willing to change, they're not willing to adapt. I think that's what stood out with Ferguson, is that he was always willing to adapt and change his team to the modern game. Mm-hmm. With most older managers, they seem to get stuck in that, I don't know, philosophy that my philosophy is the only philosophy. I don't know, that's my opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
But you see Mikel Arteta, Ole, Lampard, they come to, they're these big clubs. They understand the club. That's what's important, the philosophy. Because I'm a United supporter. I noticed that Van Gaal didn't understand the United philosophy. Mourinho, Moyes, but Ole, he's won with United. He knows what it takes to win with United and what the belief needs to be. So I guess it's just younger managers have a different mentality, right?
I think also too the relatability to the player and understanding as much as how the game has changed. And this is the difference between a Jose and Ole, where Ole saw David Beckham be pulled towards the off the pitch side and the entertainment side and marketing and all that, the celebrity of it. And while Ole didn't have those opportunities, he really saw the biggest star firsthand. He was next to him. I'm sure he went to a lot of events and got to see a glimpse of kind of that lifestyle and why it would be so appealing to someone like David Beckham. So he understands Paul Pogba in that sense, and Jose doesn't. And I hate to harp on Jose because I do love him, but I just sadly I feel like I'm watching. When Michael Jordan came back and played for the Wizards, I don't need to see this. And it's like you just wish they could have left on the high after leave on top like Ferguson did.
Yeah,
title, and you knew that the days were numbered, so he walked away. And Jose still believes that he's the best manager ever. You're seeing how quickly he's losing his teams now, losing the room, and I think that's really indicative of how much the game has changed and how he hasn't changed with it.
He's essentially regressing in a sense. I mean, he's a Portuguese icon in a sense. I mean, you're Portuguese, right? Like, what's his weight currently like now with Portuguese football? How do they value him?
Well, I think Portuguese football and football fans in general are hugely biased to anyone that is of their own or has done. So I think a lot of Portuguese fans who are educated in the English game can see what we're seeing, that he's losing the room, that he has this old mindset. He doesn't connect well with players. He just doesn't connect with the game. He hates all media availability. He hates any type of social media, marketing, promotion. He hates the business of football, but it's never been a bigger business. So you do have to find a way to be comfortable with both sides and play both sides of it. He just doesn't do that. So I think the Portuguese would be very happy if he took over as a national team boss. I think that's probably his next move, to be honest. Whether he'll connect with someone like a João Felix and really, relate to a Bernardo Silva and a Bruno Fernandes, I don't know. But I'd like to see him have that opportunity. And also, too, I do think that now, he always said that international football is an old man's job, international management. And I think that he would agree now, the day-to-day of being around a club, being around these players all the time, really has worn him because he's not been able to adapt. Whereas the distant separation from playing with these, managing this international, I think will really serve him well. I really think that he'd thrive in that environment, and the players might as well be a bit calmer.
I think we're good to wrap things up.
I think that was good.
That was a great conversation about, not only Canadian football, but, the Canadian television's landscape and as well European game. So
down to chat anytime, guys.
Yeah, we greatly appreciate your
time. No worries.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Brendan. And we'll shout you out on our social medias and everything. So thank you so much.
Hey, I appreciate it, guys. Keep up the great work, man. I love the TikToks.
All right, guys. So that was our little interview with Brendan Dunlop. I understand it was a little choppy at times. The audio wasn't great.
It ended a little abruptly, but we greatly appreciate Brendan's time. We know he's a busy guy. He's got a real job.
Yeah,
we're not job people. But thank you for his time. Thank you for the great discussion, not only on Canadian Premier League, Canadian football, the Canadian landscape of television and sports, but as well just talking about football in general. And that's what the 90th Minute's all about. That's why we started this podcast. Hopefully that's why you guys got involved with the 90th Minute.
So before we outro, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you already haven't. Let's just do that little thing. It's always nice. And then, guys, we'll see you next time. Peace.
See ya.